This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Stick around to the end of the video for a special offer they're making available through my channel. Okay, so let's start by talking about how I'm going to handle spoilers, since I know a lot of people are hyped about this and they want to make sure that any review is largely spoiler-free. I will not be revealing any story content other than that Miles Morales is a spider guy who has to do some spider things against some bad guys. I'm going to show you one or two of the more exciting action sequences just to show you how fucking cool they are, but there are dozens of these in the game and there's plenty more to explore, so don't be too worried. I'm not going to spoil the greatest moments in the game or anything like that, don't worry. I'll be showing some cutscene footage, but again, nothing that will at all disrupt any of your enjoyment of the story. No reveals, nothing big. This review is very, very spoiler free. The other thing I'll mention is that I can't talk about the improvements made to the existing Spider-Man game as part of the remaster Ultimate Edition update thing that they did. Since I didn't get sent review code for that, I'll cover that off at a later time when I do get my hands on it. And with that out of the way, god damn, this is one hell of a start to next gen.
So I'm diving from the top, yeah. Ready for the fall, so let's do this, ain't scared no more, yeah. City gone dark, yeah. I'ma set the spark, yeah. So let's go, yeah. Let's go all out.
So right off the bat, when I say that this is a next gen title, I'm sure at least a few people are going to be wondering out loud, is it really next gen? Yes, it is. Here's how long it takes to load this game from the PlayStation UI. And here's how long it takes to load the game from the game menu to the point where you are web slinging in New York City.
Man, I'm tired.
Did you miss it? You probably did. Let's play it again in slow motion. This is utter fucking insanity. In all my years of playing video games, I have never, ever seen any game with a world like this load anywhere near this fast. Not on console, not on PC. This is madness and the absolute perfect showcase of just what we're in store for this coming generation. The other thing you're going to quickly experience is the impact of the new DualSense controller. You actually experience it right here in these opening moments when this train is running along the tracks. You feel the controller simulating the feeling of being on the train with this sort of dum dum. Like, I can't explain it to you, obviously, that sounds ridiculous, but trust me, it's a thing. It's the first of many examples you'll find throughout this game of the DualSense flexing its muscle. I honestly can't explain it to you because it's something you need to feel, but no other Rumble I've ever experienced has managed to simulate an environment or a setting in this way before. This is new, this is next gen, and we're not even into the actual game yet.
Where do I begin?
Spider-Man Miles Morales offers two different graphical settings on the PS5. The default setting is Fidelity Mode, which runs at 4K 30 FPS and has advanced graphical effects such as ray tracing enabled. The other mode is a Performance Mode, which runs at 4K 60 FPS but has those advanced settings turned off. I played the entire game through in performance mode because 60 FPS web slinging is the best web slinging, but I also did go back and do some comparisons of the opening few hours to get a sense of how it looked in the fidelity mode. Long story short, there are some minor graphical improvements in the fidelity mode, but absolutely nowhere near enough improvement to warrant giving up 60 FPS. This demonstration here on top of the truck showcases how reflections are handled differently between the two modes, and yeah, there's a difference, but it's not huge. Similarly, this section on the street with sunlight reflecting off puddles showcases that the fidelity mode does offer a more realistic rendition of light and reflection, but it's pretty minor. I mean, this is Watch Dogs Legion running on the Xbox One X at 4K with ray tracing off, and this is Watch Dogs running on an ultra-wide monitor on an RTX 3080 with ray tracing turned on. Now that's a difference. That's something to write home about. Here in Spider-Man Miles, the differences are far more minor than that, and you're giving up a full 30 frames a second in a game where that sensation of speed is just everything. I mean, take a look at these two swinging sections. Can you tell the difference between these two other than the frame rate? By all means, go fidelity if you want, but when everything is whizzing past you as fast as this, I don't feel like it matters that much. Prove me wrong, Digital Foundry, prove me wrong. Now you might be looking at this footage and thinking, well, that looks pretty much the same as the PS4 version. Not much of an upgrade there. That's like the way our brains remember what it was like to play Ocarina of Time for the first time, where our brains remember it looking like this. But it really looked like this. Here's Spider-Man PS4 gameplay. And here is Spider-Man Miles Morales gameplay. Spider-Man PS4 is certainly no slouch, but it's got nothing on Miles. The sheer detail in the cityscape, from the geometry to the glass of the skyscrapers to the lighting to the sheer depth of textures, the world just pops with so much more detail and vibrancy at every turn, day or night, rain or shine. The density of the crowds on the streets makes New York feel much more alive than it ever did before. Spider-Man Miles is just a vastly better looking game, and there's just no comparison. The fact that you can get this sort of visual uplift while doubling the frame rate is a true testament to just how next-gen Spider-Man Miles Morales really is. For me, the most impressive visuals were the internal spaces. Spider-Man PS4 had a fairly traditional, almost realistic looking color palette. Spider-Man Miles is just this crazy explosion of neon color moving through internal spaces. You're just blown away by the artistry of it all. It also showcases what can be achieved even without ray tracing turned on. This footage here is all running in performance mode and it still looks absolutely stunning. Not only do these spaces and this approach to color look incredible, they give Spider-Man Miles a unique visual identity that creates a clear dividing line between this game and the last. Separate from the better visuals and technology, Spider-Man Miles has its own unmistakable flair that leaves its mark at every turn, and nowhere is this flair more evident than in the combat. Hot damn, Insomniac know how to make good combat. The first Spidey took the 360 dodge-based combat pioneered by the likes of Batman Arkham and then massively expanded on it with more verticality, environmental engagement, a flashier moveset, and some absolutely stunning finishes. Here in Spider-Man Miles, all of that remains wholly intact, only now you have access to Miles' collection of bioelectrical moves. They're called Venom attacks for some reason, and they all let you do things like massive KO punches, huge AoE ground pounds, stunning aerial knockups, and huge dashes across the screen. The Venom resource has to be earned by beating on regular enemies, but it comes pretty cheaply, allowing you to use these new moves more often than not. These moves are important because the new enemies in Spider-Man Miles are no joke. These supercharged bad guys are a hell of a lot tougher than what you faced in the previous game, utilizing their new tech to block your attacks, bum rush you, and just generally mess you up. I certainly noticed a step up in difficulty this time around, and I think the game knew that as well because there was a much stronger focus on stealth this time around. Stealth takedowns were an option on PS4, but you got the sense that they were just that, like an option. Here in Miles, stealth feels far more obligatory because the number of enemies on screen combined with their potency mean that you really have to pick off at least a few before you choose to engage, lest you find yourself outnumbered, outgunned, and outlived. But yeah, man, this combat, it's so fun, so much spectacle, such an awesome skill ceiling, so much flexibility, just so much goodness packed into this. Very few games deliver thrills on the level that Spider-Man PS4 did, and Insomniac genuinely outdid themselves here with Miles. These developers are just crazy talented, man, just crazy. So, what about the game more broadly, stuff like its story, its characters, its world, exploration, side content, etc.? I'm pleased to report that all of it is great, but it probably won't resonate with you quite as hard as it did with Spider-Man PS4 because you're familiar with a lot of it. The quality is still there, but the surprise factor isn't. Also, the game is just smaller and more narrowly focused, which is one of the reasons that it isn't a full-price title. Spider-Man Miles Morales tells the tale of Miles Morales, a guy that has spider powers. I won't spoil any details except to say that Miles finds himself thrust into the middle of a plot that imperils all of New York City, so Miles has to save the city while also coming to terms with what it means to be a spider guy, since that's kind of new to him. Much like the first game, Spider-Man Miles is very much a story of family and friendship. There are a lot of characters that are quite analogous to the characters in Peter's life, but their personalities and stories are just so different from each other that it doesn't feel familiar. Miles himself is just a great character. He's truly his own person, with his own sense of humor, his own motivations, his own approach to problems. He's not Peter Parker 2.0, he's Miles, and I just love seeing this rendition of him as much as I enjoyed seeing it in Spider-Verse or in the comics. Still, this is a story of more limited scope. I finished Spider-Man Miles in about 10 hours, doing a fair amount of side content along the way. It's a shorter campaign populated with fewer villains and boss encounters. Spider-Man PS4 felt like an anthology, just brimming with stories and characters. There's just a lot of stuff. Spider-Man Miles feels far more like a traditional Marvel movie. One storyline, one major villain, one and done, thank you very much. One of the major benefits of this more focused approach is that Insomniac have done away with the awful Mary Jane stealth sections. My god, they were bad. They also ditched the Peter Parker scientist sections, replacing them with in-mission puzzles that utilize Miles' unique bioelectricity. I love this approach. These sections on the PS4 felt like they belonged to a totally different game. They completely ground everything to a halt. Here in Spider-Man Miles, the puzzles pace the adventure in a way that never interrupts the flow. It's a more organic and more fun way of showcasing the different side of Spider-Man's smarts and capabilities. The missions themselves are similar to what you experienced in the first game, especially when it comes to locations. Now, to be fair, this is still the same New York City you explored in Spider-Man PS4, so you can't expect it to be that different. Having said that, I was sent back to a lot of the same buildings and rooftops and construction sites and dockyards that I'd seen before. It definitely feels familiar, especially when it comes to the side content, which is very often reusing those existing combat spaces. It didn't bother me a great deal, but it was a reminder that this is a spin-off title rather than being a fully fledged sequel. When it comes to side content, yes, there's plenty of it to be had. There are caches hidden throughout the city. There are traversal, combat, and stealth challenges. There's even a unique activity that taps into Miles' hobby of mixing music, but I won't spoil that one. All of this unlocks materials used to craft gadget upgrades and new suits. There's plenty of them to collect, and each of them unlock unique mods that can be swapped in and out, so the visual appearance of your suit doesn't affect your mods. This goes for the Spider-Verse suit, which has mods that render Spidey at 12 frames a second to mimic the technique used in the movie, as well as the comic book style onomatopoeia. In Spider-Man Miles, the process of clearing out the map markers remains as effortless and rewarding as it did earlier, propped up by the genuine joy of web-slinging between locations, only now that web-slinging feels even better because you can feel the adaptive triggers kicking in as you shoot out that web, and the haptic feedback hits different as you hit the bottom of your swing, mirroring the tension in the web. You just never get tired of this. So, what's the final word on Spider-Man Miles Morales? In my view, despite the fact that Spider-Man Miles is a spin-off title, it's also a genuine next-gen title. The load times have to be seen to be believed. In fact, let's see them again right now. That shit's crazy. That's insane. That's the best I've ever experienced in any video game ever, full stop. The haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers combine to make you feel like Spider-Man in a way that you've never experienced before as you swing through the skyscrapers of New York City and beat the pulp out of bad guys. There is no game we've seen to this point that serves up this sort of visual fidelity at this sort of frame rate on a console. The spectacle of combat, the number of enemies on screen, their lighting and particle effects, the bioelectricity illuminating the action, all of it is just stupefying. It's just brilliant. It's a brilliant showcase for the power of next gen while also being a brilliant game. As I said, this isn't going to surprise you in the same way that the first one did. Much of it is familiar, but there's nothing wrong with that when the quality bar is already set so high. If you're getting a PS5, Spider-Man Miles Morales is an absolute must purchase, and if you still have a PS4, you should still buy it. It's still awesome. You still love it. Enjoy. This video was brought to you by Squarespace, the best place to build a professional looking website for your hobby, business, or just because you feel like it. Let's say you want to have a career in video games or content creation. Having your own website would be a damn good start. You could use it to profile your own artwork if you were an artist. You could showcase your best writing there if that's your thing. Or if you wanted to be a games journalist or a commentator, you could start your own blog. With Squarespace, the process is always simple. Just choose from one of their many professional looking templates, update it using their intuitive tools, and voila, you've got yourself a very schmick looking website in no time. There's even more advanced features like the ability to schedule posts or traffic overview analytics so you can gain insights into where the clicks are coming from. To get started, visit squarespace.com, and when you're ready to get serious, visit squarespace.com/skillup for a 10% discount on your first purchase of a website or a domain name. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it. Thanks for watching my video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down so I know to do better for next time. If you enjoyed yourself, consider subscribing, and if you really enjoyed yourself, maybe consider hitting that notification bell so you never miss a video. You can see my patrons here on the left. They're awesome. They're amazing. If you want to join them, check out my Patreon page. Thank you again. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.